imagine from how Season 2 ended, Season 3 had a lot of expectations riding on it right from the start.
And things start with The Awakening, which time skips so far ahead that Aang has a head of hair!
I have hair?
Yeah, good on them having even Aang have that reaction, as most people wouldn't have realized he wasn't naturally bald. I remember we saw him shaving in at least one episode of the Ba Sing Se arc, even on first viewing, but no time before that. And it's a good way to hide the markings in enemy territory.
He's aboard a Fire Nation ship controlled by their allies, finally meeting Sokka and Katara's father, Hakoda, while Zuko muses over what he's done as he finally reaches home. The audience shown he's in a relationship with Mai.
You're so beautiful when you hate the world.
I don't hate you.
But the greeting he receives, which should be wondrous and cathartic, is anything but fulfilling. As a result, he doesn't tell anyone of Katara's Deus Ex Machina, which could have saved him. Aang learns the world thinks him dead, as Sokka informs him of a revised version of their plan. They'll gather allies they'd run into previously, and coordinate a surgical strike during the eclipse instead. They're found out and attacked, but as Aang needs to stay hidden for their plot to work, Aang becomes frustrated as he can't do anything to help. Everyone else is fixing his messes as others still pay for his absence, for his weakness, and in his self-loathing, he begins to reject the others, wanting to go it alone.
I need to redeem myself. I need my honor back.
And the scene immediately transitions to Zuko.
Because this is the parallel they've been building all of this time. Point and counterpoint. Kind child forced into situations far beyond them, their pillar of guidance robbed from them, and when the duties they endeavor to show and make themselves ready for result in failure, that failure brings about immense self-loathing and anger at the world.
The only difference is Zuko is both behind and ahead of the cycle, and Aang has more people to support him who refuse to let this slide. Whereas Iroh, I think, in wanting Zuko to work at it himself with guidance, let it fester too long before confronting him. But with such a source burned out, Zuko faces his father, this being the first episode we're allowed to see Ozai's face.
And he looks normal. Granted, he's voiced by Mark Hamill, doing one of his more menacing bad guy voices that he sadly doesn't get to use that much because, come on, he's the Joker. And when he's voicing an animated bad guy, that's what you usually expect.
But yeah, our bad guy, despite his ambitions to conclude this war and conquer the world, and in spite of his terrible, terrible parenting and cruelty, is just another man. Though Zuko quickly realizes his home is a den of snakes, when Ozai reveals Azula lied about how Aang died, so as to pin the failure to kill him if he reemerges on Zuko. Ironically, Aang's recklessness in going it alone does almost get him killed, so there's almost no worry about that. It's only the intervention of Roku and Yue's spirits coming to Aang, and telling him this war was set to begin long before Aang was even born, does get him to return to the others, reconcile, and avoid going down the road Zuko took. This episode also addresses Katara's abandonment issues towards Hakoda while she's back in his presence, a whole new context to why she wanted to avoid seeing him last season, that I think almost losing Aang has helped more bring up in her again, remembering how she lost her mother and could do nothing, whereas here, she managed to save someone she loves, but might end up losing him anyways. Which brings us to the headband.
Which, as said in the Nostalgia Critics top 10 lists of the series, is pretty much Footloose in a fantasy setting.
Now I gotta cut loose, footloose, kick off the Sunday shoes.
Yeah, as someone who's only liked Kevin Bacon in Tremors, this was kind of terrible for me.
As Team Avatar begins sneaking through the country, with new outfits for the lot that I really felt looked good on all of them, Aang ends up thrown in a Fire Nation school and finds things structured to be very regimental and soul-crushing, not to mention highly revisionist historically. But they need the details on the Fire Nation they can't seem to get anywhere else, which leads to Aang trying to free up the spirits of the kids, and the dance party which is busted by those trying to take down the dance, who in turn help them escape in gratitude.
What I didn't get about this for the longest time was, we'd seen Team Avatar in Fire Nation territory before, so why was this so different now?
And then I realized, aside from that side trip to Roku's temple, they really hadn't. What they had been in was parts of the Earth Kingdom that had been conquered by the Fire Nation over the 100-Year War. Those were colonial villages and regions that had been settled.
In fact, it really took looking at a map as it would be in the Legend of Korra era for that to sink in. I honestly had not thought about it, and the show didn't bring it up, but it makes a lot of sense and fully explains this cultural disparity. The Fire Nation hadn't had to worry about interactions with outside influences or worry of others invading, so it had become so insular, they had begun to indoctrinate their youth how they wanted to through the lens of tradition and discipline, and this war was right by being the strongest and the best, and the most intelligent, and all these other little elements of character that just snap fully into focus about why people that aren't inherently evil are doing their part to continue this conquest that has brought so much suffering to so many.
In this context, it explains a lot about Iroh as well, as he snapped out of that, or was of an age where such hadn't become so damaging, so was still able to learn from the other tribes and the mistakes of his people. Whereas Azula is the ultimate byproduct of this kind of societal expectation and inbreeding taken to its most extreme.
And the best part is, it doesn't even need to be overt to give us all of that. It does it with a few scenes in the school and interactions with the Fire Nation kids, and allows us to build this bigger picture from the past experiences we've seen with the nation. So yeah, I don't really like the episode, but I certainly appreciate it for blowing my mind with its story and lore subtexts. And subtexts are a really important part of the series at times.
Granted, the discipline aspect is a critical element of firebending, so that's not so bad. But discipline is flexible to the person, and not so rigid it becomes suffocating as it's shown here.
To not even address how that discipline isn't so much used to control oneself, but applied to place control and dominance onto others.
Zuko similarly tries to ease his conscience by trying to shift the guilt and blame on Iroh, who he visits in prison. The man ignores him, and such weighs on him. So he does what Iroh did for him, and he keeps trying. But in the meantime, he makes mistakes, hiring Combustion Man to find and kill Aang for him. The Painted Lady is a pretty blatant environmentalism message, where the group passed by a fishing village effectively destroyed by the metal refinery upriver expelling its waste into it, with Katara's compassion coming into effect and endeavors to help them by taking on the guise of one of the local legends. She ends up feeling immense pride from her actions as the village turns around just from her actions, which drives her into trying to destroy the steel mill. But Aang discovers her actions and endeavors to help her in her plan, which succeeds with a quick application of bending. But the workers end up thinking it's retaliation by the villagers, forcing them to intervene there as well. Sokka's resultant plan, using the same superstition to fool the soldiers, and thinking Katara's as not just another waterbender, but the actual spirit more promptly. And while the deception falls apart after this as the villagers find them out, it does get them to confront the reality that their problem won't go away until someone does something about it, and ignoring it does nothing.
Which makes it one of the better TV show environmentalism message episodes, honestly, as they don't beat it over your head like, say, a Miyazaki movie would.
However, with everyone else getting stronger through bending and battle experience, Sokka has fallen far behind in such, only his wit's really outstanding at this point in helping through situations, as the last time he got any training, it was Season 1. And it's understandable that, in a world where people can freely command the elements, that the normal guy would feel inferior and useless.
Each of you is so amazing and so special, and I'm not. I'm just the guy in the group who's regular.
So, it's about damn time that was addressed, as the group crossed paths with the Swordmaster as Sokka tries to find a way to improve himself, and is accepted as a student after showing humility. The Master...
My strength is as the strength of 10 because my heart is pure. Do you know who I am?
Teaches in such a way that learning the art of the sword becomes as intuitive to Sokka as the others took to their bending arts. After the expected comedy antics. While he's busy, however, the others come to realize the levity, direction, and leadership Sokka provided them, not knowing what to do or what to plan out with him gone. So, they're more than happy to help him retrieve a piece of a meteor they encountered before all of this to help him forge his own sword with the guidance of the Master.
Yeah, I looked this up, and this has been a source of much debate online, by the way. Meteor metal isn't considered all that special or all that good. In fact, most meteors are just, well, rock, with very little metal in them. Though if they did encounter one that had a lot of metal in it, it's been studied that in certain instances, the reason to do such would be because the metal would require less comparative smelting to become pure, as the heat and force of re-entry would do a chunk of the work for you, and thus you'd have fewer impurities in it. And in a world of earthbenders, you don't want them having any earth impurities to bend your blade. So either it would turn out awesome, or as utter crap.
Sokka seems to have lucked out, however, and gotten the former. But honestly, a sword forged from a fallen star just has that romantic element to it that's just plain endearing. And, in a ceremony, the Master grants Sokka his blade, telling him he's the best student he's ever had, due to the traits he's always used being the keys to greatness in the art.
Then he does something very stupid and tells them they are Team Avatar.
It results in a fight that shows just how much Sokka's progressed to even be able to briefly hold his own, and it does have a positive ending, for the Master is a member of the White Lotus, and gets Sokka to realize his own worth. While all that occurs, Aro begins preparing for his eventual escape, fooling the guards into thinking he's gone senile, and training himself in secret.
Following this is The Beach, which is a fan service episode.
Because it's about Zuko and Team Azula in swimsuits while on a forced vacation to Ember Island, naturally. Zuko, of course, is not one that takes vacations lying down, and even with Mai around, the girl's indifference to, well, pretty much everything, does not lead to a romantic vacation, especially when one's sister is involved.
Especially not one that is, well... That gesture works better if you can whistle.
Yeah, as everything is about dominance with her, without any way to direct herself, she ends up showing her crazy way more than her sociopathic norm.
Yes, we've defeated you for all time. You will never rise from the ashes of your shame and humiliation. Well, that was fun.
They end up invited to a party, continuing the theme that this group have no social skills.
And it's pretty awkward to watch, even as a guy that doesn't have good social skills.
It's a great place, if you like sand.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Show of hands, who would like to see a team-up of Azula and Darth Vader? How about one of her and Kylo Ren?
As Zuko and Mai have a fight concerning the melancholy in their relationship, Zuko stalks off to a closed shrine he remembered from childhood that still held happy memories for him. This being the most poignant part of the episode, as it's continuing the arc about him having what he wants and, like Mai, feeling no satisfaction from it. Their group dynamic explodes catastrophically, as without Azula's forced association of the group, the truth is, they hate each other, tightly exposing why she's like she is as a cry for attention and to differentiate herself from her identical sisters, while Mai's melancholy was incited by the expectations of her parents of her being the perfect, silent, non-existent background element that such a facade eventually consumed all there was behind it. And Zuko, the rage he can't get rid of, that the others force him to reveal after he lashes out at all of them.
I'm angry at myself!
And while Zuko's was the most engaging, Azula's is the funniest.
I don't have sob stories like all of you. I could sit here and complain how our mom liked Zuko more than me, but I don't really care. My own mother thought I was a monster. She was right, of course, but it still hurt.
Speaking of explosions, as Team Avatar similarly relaxes, the accidental discovery that Aang's alive is sidelined by Combustion Man, who attacks them.
Dude. Just dude. He can shoot explosions from his third eye. That is fucking awesome!
While they escape, it's nonetheless a tough battle. The Avatar and the Fire Lord gives us what Roku alluded to in the season premiere, of his relationship with Sozin, revealed to both Aang through connection to his spirit and traveling to his home on the day of the summer solstice, and to Zuko through diaries of Sozin kept by the Fire Sages. Roku and Sozin as children were best friends. Sozin convinced he was destined for greatness, only to learn his opposite was the single most important man in the world, revealed in a way that paralleled Aang's own. But Sozin stood with him, assured in their friendship, only for that to change as Roku saw the world and grew as a person amongst all he encountered.
I can't believe you were friends with Monkey Yatso just like I was.
Some friendships are so strong, they can even transcend lifetimes.
But for Roku, it took 12 years, and a person could change magnitudes in all that time. For, as Roku trained, Sozin acquired the vision to see the world united in the same way the Avatar unites the elements, to spread the prosperity and peace of the Fire Nation to the others. While Roku rejected the idea,
And pretty quickly and regimentally as well, instead of trying to find a diplomatic way to do such so the divisions between cultures would fall away and they could learn from one another.
Anyways, since he refused to hear of it again, Sozin just went ahead and began conquering regions of the Earth Kingdom, an act that broke their friendship. Roku showed mercy, but this too was a mistake, Roku retreating from the world and ignoring the problem, until the volcano on the island that was his home erupted. Roku did what he could to hold back the eruption to let everyone else escape, but even with his mastery of the elements, nature will not be contained if it does not wish it, and eventually led to Roku being poisoned by its emissions. Sozin amazingly coming to help as things neared their end, the two together stopping the eruption, but Sozin in the end leaving him to die, so his vision of a prosperous future for all could be realized.
Except without him to spearhead it and the bigger picture of unification, not conquest, it would be a vision that, ironically, would come into form with the United Republic seen in Korra. But here, his home went on committing atrocity after atrocity, with his own family being both the instigators and the perpetrators, alongside Roku's own.
For Zuko is the son of Ozai, descended from Sozin, and Ursa, descended from Roku. Iroh knew this, and sent him the note that allowed him to seek this out in hopes he would learn from it a way to settle his own internal conflicts, and with it, help bring back balance to the world. The runaway brings the simmering personality conflict between Katara and Toph to a head. After a training exercise sets the two off for the first time in a while, Toph starts using her earthbending irresponsibly to cheat scam artists out of their con jobs, using earthbending in their games. And while this nets them resources to prepare the next stage of their plans, they start in turn pulling con games via Toph's blindness, which is where Katara tries to put her foot down. But Toph's exhilaration in all this is incited by the freedom to do what she wants outside of her parents' control, and Katara coming down on her being the same way her mother did, when Katara acts bossy at least, instinctively drawing out her stubbornness. And such behavior from Katara, as Sokka explains, is due to her being forced to take up her mother's role in the family and grow up with that expectation leaving a mark on her. And learning of that gets Toph to admit, well, Katara's already a better parent figure than her actual mom, as Katara's actions show she really cares about her. Unfortunately, their reconciliation and end to Toph's scams, another scam, results in their capture by Combustion Man, in another battle with the silent antagonist. Katara gets them free by using her own sweat as bendable water.
This is an important detail due to a development in the next episode, the Puppet Master, which reveals certain waterbenders can develop their skills to the point they can bend the water in other living things.
This isn't exactly unprecedented. The Swanbenders in Season 2 showed their ability to manipulate the oversaturated plant life.
The problem is, plants are non-sapient and non-sentient, and this is taking it to the animal and humans tier. When bloodbending, as it's known, you're not just controlling water, You're taking control away from something that can understand what is happening to it. That loss of control is in and of itself horrifying, and what one is forced to do while like that is a violation to their very self. And unlike some other series, I am really glad it is treated as the horrifying act that it is.
And it starts benignly enough, with an old woman encountering the group and inviting them in, only for them to learn she was a member of the Southern Water Tribe that's lived in the Fire Nation for decades, as she was stolen from it during one of the Fire Nation's raids at the tribe. She managed to escape and hid herself here, and since Katara's here and from the South, hey, might as well pass on the secrets of their tribe's style, right?
It's a trap!
Yeah, that captivity and what she did to escape have twisted this woman, being very direct in teaching offensive means of using water, how to get the most out of the least, to draw it out of the air around her, things that can turn the smallest drop into the most surgical needle, all with the subtext of using it in the best way to attack, to kill, to sunder, instead of to erode, to sweep, to bind.
Strange land, you do what you must to survive.
It's little surprise then that yes, what she did to escape the Fire Nation's prisons was to learn how to bend other people.
It helps that there's a subtle atmosphere of wrongness throughout the episode that helps sell all of this, that tells the audience not to trust her. But as a character in the show, you can't help but not see that. The old woman's actions are revealed when the others investigate disappearances they think are tied to a spirit, discovering her captives from the past moons, who should honestly be long dead, as the woman trains Katara in its use, all along ranting and raving about how she's justified in the act she commits because it's retribution for those she lost, for all that the Fire Nation has done, not realizing she's become just as, if not more monstrous than those that caused those atrocities to her, by choosing to attack innocents. Unfortunately, the episode ends with Katara learning bloodbending to save Sokka and Aang from her machinations. And now with that knowledge, she is forever left with the temptation to use it.
This show could get freaking dark when it wanted to.
Speaking of darkness, that brings us to Nightmares and Daydreams. As Team Avatar arrive early to where they'll begin the invasion, Aang starts to panic as the others seek to rest in preparation. But the nervousness and anxiety results in a set of dreams.
And it's not that interesting at all, and kind of a waste of an episode. One of the worst in the series, in fact.
The Day of the Black Sun event is the mid-season two-parter which ends with Zuko joining Team Avatar, and the series ends with the 4-part Sozin's Comet, leaving only 5 episodes to really explore that dynamic before the series ends. Far too short of a period in my opinion, due to how well they've done in developing the character into a sympathetic individual.
Meaning aside from one event each, first of the 5 being them letting Zuko join, Sokka's being a 2-parter that really should have been 1, and the final one of the 5, the penultimate clip show episode, and they didn't give one a Toph because she wasn't really around for the antagonist side of that relationship. Well, there's little depth to the reconciliation in the series, nor much creation of a positive dynamic as a result.
But having Zuko join them at the end of Book 2 and skipping the I'm home arc through these first 10 is similarly problematic, as had they not done that, Zuko would have always wondered, what if? The temptation to go back even after siding against them would always be there. Plus, he's had to finally take the look inside of himself he's needed because of this, so the character comes out better for it this way.
And because he comes out better for it, we wanted to see this Zuko, who's developed like this to have more time with the gang. And I guess that's part of the draw of the comic storylines that the writers produced after the series, to more give such a dynamic even if it's not animated nor voiced by the cast. Because the show pretty much dropped the ball on seeing much of that at all.
But of the episodes before this one in the season, all of the others do something significant for progression. Whether if it's learning about the Fire Nation while actually in the Fire Nation, or character dynamic or skill development. Nightmares and Daydreams, however, could have been cut without any problem.
It doesn't help that the episode ends up doing a bunch of dream cliches, like having things not conform to reality, and I don't like it was all a dream episodes.
or even using the Eastern stylization the series has long made its strength to finally go full-blown anime with the freedom of expression. And Aang's panic throughout the episode just isn't funny, and yet it's played for laughs the entire way through. Yeah, he is nervous, but this goes far, far too far.
So once again, it's up to the Zuko subplot to interest me in seeing it at all, but even that feels redundant at this point, even though it directly calls back to how the whole situation started.
In that there's a warp planning session Zuko hears about, only to realize he wasn't invited to it. But when he asks about it, he is invited to join in and give his advice to it, but while it goes better than the original incident that led to his dishonor, the event brought him no satisfaction, like everything else.
And because it's like everything else in this arc, there's little point to it, or could have been combined with the prior events and instances. In fact, it probably would have been better to be the incident that incited their little vacation to Ember Island, instead of feeling tacked on like it is.
So the day of the invasion finally comes as the mid-season two-parter, with Hakoda bringing all of their allies and those they helped out over the series. The Mechanist even bringing Aang a new, improved glider. However, as Sokka and then Hakoda explain the plan to invade the capital and then defeat Ozai in the 8 minutes of the eclipse, I can't help but notice something.
Their plan would have never worked, because it all hinged from the beginning on Ozai's defeat being the end of the war. It wouldn't, because of how the Fire Nation under Ozai and his father, it's become self-sustaining, with people like Zhao and Azula in positions of power to continue it after those above them are circumvented.
At least it would not have until recently, and why Zuko going back to the Fire Nation was narratively a good thing. As with him back as Crown Prince and his own indecision towards the actual point of the war, were succession to fall to him, he would have ended it thanks to the lessons Iroh has taught him. For Zuko as he is now, sheds his royal attire, leaving a message for Mai.
I know I've made some bad choices, but today, I'm gonna set things right.
The invasion fleet gets past the city's defenses in submersibles envisioned by Sokka and built by the Mechanist from the Northern Air Temple. Aang splits from the rest to get Ozai, while the rest serve as a distraction, but before he does...
Of course he'll...
About damn time. They've been teasing that for about half the season.
The battle is actually really impressive, with Water Tribe and Earth Kingdom variations on the Fire Nation's weapons and technology, which, despite the lack of refinement, is still damn effective. It's only due to the limitations of their resources that they're eventually overrun, the skill and ingenuity on display showing that had they had the full might of the Earth Kingdom behind them, this would have been a much different engagement. Hakoda ends up injured, Sokka taking his place as the army leader to endeavor to get them to the city proper. However, as Aang finds, everyone's gone. With knowledge of the Day of the Black Sun, Azula and Ozai were able to plot a counter-strategy to anyone that would even attempt this, thus be able to capture them after the eclipse had passed.
Thus, this plan has been doomed since before even the fall of Ba Sing Se. But it doesn't come off as the Gathered being fools, because they had no way of knowing that. Though, since the group discovered Azula's team first as the Kyoshi Warriors, they probably could have made a fair guess of it.
The core team tries to see if Ozai is hidden somewhere near the palace, and while a good idea to check, not only do they end up finding Azula instead as the eclipse begins, but such hesitation in withdrawing ends up with the rest of the forces being captured.
Primarily because without reinforcements, there's no way in hell they would have been able to hold the city.
Still, it wasn't unwarranted. Ozai is in such a bunker, they just went to the wrong one. Zuko confronting his father in the real one, and calling him out for his bullshit, his cruelty, his lies, and how he's corrupted a man's dream of prosperity in a world that's burning to the ground.
Your uncle has gotten to you, hasn't he?
Yes, he has.
Unfortunately, Azula ties them up long enough that the eclipse ends, the lightning bender letting slip to Sokka that Suki is not in good straits, but with their invasion force gone, they have nothing with which to stop whatever's planned when Sozin's comet arrives. which, as is revealed at the end of the episode, will involve war balloons redesigned from ones salvaged in the first season a few months ago.
That is insanely fast construction for this kind of fleet, and why I think that the Mechanist's design wasn't actually what resulted in their creation. I think the warships had been in planning for a long time, and his revisions just led to a breakthrough in efficiency.
The ships destroy the subs, forcing the aforementioned capture, but the good news is twofold. Iroh busted himself out during the eclipse, and Aang now has a firebending teacher.
Hello, Zuko here. You just love taking me out of my comfort zone, don't you?